virtual cafe. It's hosted by Toledo Public Schools Family and School Collaborative. I'm just going to go over the functions of Google Meets real quickly. If you haven't already, please put yourself on mute. And if you have any questions or you want to make any comments, you can put those in the chat. And then we just want to remind you, this session will be recorded.
Oh, that's me. Ground rules of the group. We want to make sure that everybody puts themselves on mute when they're not speaking so we can avoid some of the feedback. Listen with an open mind, treat everybody with respect, let people finish their sentences, and then don't be afraid to share ideas or suggestions because others might have the same idea. And if you have any questions, go ahead and use the chat function, but we can always unmute ourselves with a small group.
Okay, and then to introduce ourselves, my name is Alina Rodriguez, and I'm the Family Engagement and Community Outreach Coordinator for Toledo Public Schools.
And I'm Nicole Shetterly, the Family Engagement Coordinator for our Early Childhood Program. And if you would please put your name and introduce yourself into the chat, that would be great.
Okay, and then we have a special guest. We have two special guests today. We have Brandi Walerius. She's a board member for United Way's Women's Initiative and assists with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And then we have Lori LeGendre. She's the program director for Reach Out and Read of Northwest Ohio. So these ladies have a special presentation for us today to inform us all about Dolly Parton's Imagination Library and literacy in general. So I'll let you ladies go ahead and take it away.
Brandi, go ahead and you can introduce Imagination Library.
Sure, of course. So the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library is a national program that came to Toledo in 2014. And all families need to do, if you have a newborn to age 5 child, is sign up for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and you will get a free book mailed to you monthly. And if you're not already enrolled into the Dolly Parton Imagination Library and want that free monthly age-appropriate book for your child, you can call United Way's 211 and enroll over the phone. And I'll also include a website link in the chat that you would be able to visit that to enroll your family as well.
Imagination Library is a wonderful program, and it is so great that you can sign up at birth and follow all the way through till your child is 5 and receive a total of like 60 books. Or if you're just learning about it and your child is 2, you can still sign up. You can sign up at any time between birth and 5 and take advantage of those a free book coming to your mailbox each month. My name's Lori LeGendre. I'm the program director for Reach Out and Read. And Reach Out and Read is a pediatric literacy program. It's a literacy program that takes place at the pediatrician's office. In fact, maybe some of you go to your pediatrician for your child's well check visits. And you'll note that between the ages of 6 months and 5 years of age, at every well check visit, you might get a brand new book that the doctor brings into the room, and he or she might give you just a tip or two about how to use it at home. They might read a page or two to you to show how to engage your child in reading. They might give you some tips when you can read or how to read. But every well check visit, that's something that's going to happen. And that is all part of the Reach Out and Read program. A lot of families just think it's something that their doctor does as regular care, and truly it is. It's something that we have 24 local pediatric and family practice offices that are part of Reach Out and Read. So Hopefully, many of you benefit from that when you go to your doctor's office and you get that advice. And then if you sign up for Imagination Library, which we also do through a couple of our offices, then you can take that advice you get and go home. And when you get those books in the mail, just feel a little more confident about how and why you're sharing them with your child. So that's kind of how Brandi and I came to you today to really just talk to you about maybe one of the funnest and most pleasant things you can do with your child, and that your child often loves to spend time with, and that's with books. So we want to share some information with you, but also we love feedback. We really would like this to be what it's supposed to be, which is a chat. And chat means back and forth. And that's what we want you to do when you're reading books with your kids, to have back and forth conversation. And that's what we should do today too. So feel free to use the chat if you want to ask questions or make comments or offer up a tip that you have at your house about how you use books, when you use books, favorite books. In fact, we'd love to see in the chat box, if anyone is there, to have you write in what your favorite book was as a child, or maybe a favorite book that you've learned to enjoy since you have kids of your own. We'd love to see that. The first thing we thought we'd talk a little bit about is just, how do you choose books for your child, whether you have a 3-month-old, a 3-year-old, or older. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Usually what we recommend, and I'm going to try to hold these up so you can see them a little bit. Hopefully you can. But we usually recommend the hard books. We call them board books. They're the hard cardboard books. We usually recommend those books for kids up to age 2 at least. You know your child best. So if you have a child who's almost 3 and they're still a little rough with books, or maybe have a hard time turning the pages of a paper book, then a board book is still a good choice at your house. Board books also are perfect for infants, because what do most babies do with books? They're going to stick them right in their mouth. And you know what your doctor is going to tell you if they see that in the office? They're going to say, that's normal. That's exactly what we want to see for a 6 or 9-month-old, because that's how babies learn. They learn by putting things in their mouth. So that board book that you get when your baby's 6 months old might not last forever, but it can still be enjoyed and will last longer because it's the hard cardboard books. So this is an example of a book for kids like birth to 1. Babies love baby faces. So they love faces of humans, especially children. So a lot of times we recommend for the youngest kids just really simple books that have a face on them. It might be a face that's happy or crying. You can talk about that kind of thing. But baby face books are perfect for the birth to 1 crowd. When kids get to be, 12, 15 months, some of the developmental milestones, so the things that they're learning to do, include things like saying their first word. And the other motor skill that's pretty typical is pointing. So often we recommend for our toddlers, the early toddlers, books that have single objects on a page. Or, for instance, this one says, "Where is her belly?" And you could point to the belly. And then it says, "Can you find your belly?" And you could both find your belly together. Books for those younger toddlers really help them to encourage to say those first words and to use those basic motor skills like pointing. Moving on to a little bit older toddlers, so maybe the kids that are like 18 months, so a year and a half to around 2, the books are still our board books, but we usually start with some rhyming. And this book, for instance, says, "Will you wear a blue hat? Blue hat, blue hat. Will you wear a blue hat all day long? if you have a child who's pointing and stuff, you could ask them to point to the hat. If you're reading this to a child who's a little older, maybe their brother or sister, you could ask them to find the blue hat. That's that kind of serve and return that we want to encourage during reading together, is to not expect the child to be quiet and silent through the whole book, but to not worry about getting beginning to end, to just kind of worry about what's happening in between. So anyway, 18 to 24 books or months, we start with kind of rhyming books. After that, like I said, at age 2 or so is usually when we graduate to some paperback books. So they're more flexible, but usually around 2 or 3, kids are developing fine motor skills, like the skills with their fingers, that they can start to turn those paper pages. This is actually one of the Imagination Library books called Llama, Llama, Mad at Mama. And I know that in my house, when my 3 kids were young, this would be an appropriate book to read from time to time. I wanted to point out that with Imagination Library books, be sure you pay attention to the flaps, especially if it's still the same on the back flap, because there's some tips for you there as a parent. And I really recommend when you get your book in the mail, your kids might, want to read it right away, but whether you read it right away or not, try to take a moment when you have a quiet time, maybe when your child's napping, or maybe after you've read it the first time, and read the flap a little bit. Look at it and see, because it'll show you some other ways that you can use the book. But we start to get to stories after 2 years old, books that kind of have a beginning, middle, and end. And again, lots of rhyming, and things where you can get your child to maybe finish your sentence, especially after you've read a book over and over. So like this one says, llama, llama, having fun, blocks and puzzles in the sun. Time to shop, it's Saturday. Llama, llama wants to play. And the first few times you read it, they might not guess the word, but when you've read it, the 34th time, which often happens, and that's the way kids learn, is to have that repetition. That's a little game you can kind of play while you're reading, is to, have them guess that remaining rhyming word. So that's an example of a 2 to 3 book. And then moving on to kind of for preschool age kids, 3 to 5 or so. This is A Sweet Christmas on Sesame Street. And basically a story again, beginning, middle, and end. But what we notice is that there maybe gets to be a few more words. The story is a little bit longer. Again, your 3 to 5-year-old might have the attention span to read the whole book. And some kids, aren't quite there yet. Do what is best for you both to keep having fun looking at the book. If it starts to not be fun, then put it away for that day or that night. But, go back to it tomorrow. But one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this book is this is called a scratch and sniff book. So it's kind of a sensory book. And what happens is on the different pages, there's a little circle, and you can scratch the little circle and catch like the smell of the cinnamon rolls or the pine tree or whatever's in it. And for some kids who maybe are just a little busier and have a harder time engaging with a book that's just about the words, sometimes if you use a book that is more of a touch and feel book, so this one they get to scratch and sniff, or some books will have like a furry, pat the bunny's furry tummy or something like that. That's another way for them to engage with the book. So those are just some tips on, what books to use at what age. And also you'll notice when you get your Imagination Library books that the same thing, pretty much happens, that as your kids are younger, they're going to be getting those hard board books. The stories will be coming later, so stay patient. Or, if you are lucky and you have maybe a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, you'll have 2 books coming into the house in 1 month, and you'll have a variety of books that you can use with your kids. So, any questions so far?
Sorry. Go ahead, Nicole.
I just had one question. Is the Imagination Library program limited to zip codes, or is it open to all?
It is open to everybody.
Great. Thank you.
It is in all 88 counties now. Here in Lucas County, we've been able to expand to all zip codes.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
one thing I'll add,
county is the same. I guess you wouldn't necessarily have Wood County families online here, but yes, that's correct.
one thing I'll add too is, once you kind of graduate from reading out loud the board book with your child, hang on to them, because the most exciting part of it is then when they get to turn around and read it out loud to you. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's one of the most rewarding, things to happen as a mother is, the book that I used to have to read to him, he now can read out loud to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And you might even find your kids, just because you've read them the same book over and over again, they will read it to you, and it might not be exactly the same words, but they remember the sequence. Again, that's all that learning happening in their brains. So it's just kind of fun even to turn the tables. And when you have that, especially really eager and verbal 3, 4, 5-year-old, to say, mommy's tired or daddy's tired. How about you read me a book tonight and see what happens with it. So any other questions or comments right now? Okay, so we thought we'd also share just kind of some read aloud tips. We really already talked about a couple of them, and share a couple more book examples. One is that it's never too early to start reading. Kids, no matter what age, need attention and love attention. And oftentimes looking at books means you're sitting in the lap of someone who you care about and who cares about you. And just that physical affection time that you're physically touching, you're not running around the kitchen getting breakfast ready or running out the door. That alone is, I think, it lets kids know that they're important enough for you to take a break from the things that you're doing and just spend some time looking at a book. So it's never too early to start. Your 3-month-old might, not really even be looking at the book. They might be looking at your face, but they are looking at your face and watching how your mouth is moving, saying the words and hearing your voice. So never too early to start. I think it's also, as we mentioned before, good to remember that a few minutes is okay. It doesn't have to be, there are a lot of, advice out there to read 20 minutes every day. And if you have a child who loves to sit for 20 minutes and read, and you have that time, go for it. It's certainly a great thing to do. But every day is different at most households. And so I think you know your child and yourself. And so if it's just a few minutes is good. The other thing that could be good is just to not even actually, often we don't say read books. We sometimes just say look at books or share books together. So that might be where if you yourself or another family member, maybe even like a sibling who's not quite reading yet, you can ask them to look at books with your child as well. And maybe not even read the words, just look at the pictures. This is also an Imagination Library book. It's called Goodnight Gorilla, and it's actually one of my favorite stories of all time. There's no words pretty much in this book. Well, at the beginning, he says Goodnight Gorilla. But if you look at the pages, it's really just a story of the zookeeper going through his job of getting the animals ready for bedtime without words. So The story might be a little different every time you look at it together because you might notice something different in the pictures. So pictureless books, also great. And I think the libraries are back to being closed now. But if that's something you're interested in when they are able to open back up, or even if you call, because I think you can call and request books, you could make a special request for wordless books. So that's important too. One thing that parents will often tell our doctors at their doctor visits is that their child has a hard time sitting still to read, and they want to grab the book, or they want to hold it themselves. A good tip is to let them become a little bit engaged with the book, like maybe have them be the one who turns the pages. Another tip we often give, especially for toddlers who are busy, is that while you're reading one book, give them another. Maybe I'm reading this book. I might give my toddler this book to just hang on to. Keeps their hands busy. They can do the little fiddling that they need to do. But then sometimes that allows them to keep their hands busy, but also listen a little bit to your story, because it does get a little frustrating when you're trying and they're just hopping all over your lap. We talked about asking questions. Ask questions throughout the book. Look at the pictures. We talked about how it's normal for kids to want the same book over and over, even when you're really tired of it. Another thing I'll mention is if you're in your home, if either you and your family or perhaps grandparents or something speak another language, whether it's Spanish or Chinese or Korean or whatever, we really recommend that, you read books in any language that your child's going to hear. So, and that you're comfortable with. For instance, if grandma is the caretaker during the day, maybe while you're at work and she speaks mostly Spanish, if you're at a Reach Out and Read site, you can ask to get a bilingual book. But then by bilingual means that the book will have both English and Spanish in it. But, you'll be more comfortable if you're reading in the language you're most comfortable with. And again, kids sort of don't care because they're just having a good time reading with you. And if they're already exposed to the language, they'll love learning about it. I think the other important thing is for a good family reading tip is to let them see you reading too. And that doesn't have to mean that you're reading a 500-page novel. Think about what you like to read, and you can put in the chat if you have favorite things that you like to read. It could be a book from the library. It could be a magazine. It could be the weekly grocery ads. That's a great thing to use with even older kids, is have them sit down with the grocery ads and circle the foods that they like to have or whatever for the week. That's a great literacy activity. It might be cookbooks. Cookbooks are literacy and math all in one, because it's reading, it's following directions, it's learning about measuring and all that kind of thing. None of us really use those cookbooks for cooking anyway. We just like looking at the pictures, and kids will like looking at them too. So let kids see you reading something that you enjoy at different times. And I think above all, just, have fun. Books should be a happy, relaxing time. While we will ask you, if possible, to read to your child, several times a week, most of all, we want it to be a happy, relaxing time. Anything to add, Brandi, with that?
I would just add, like you said, have fun with it. Use creative voices. There's different characters in the book. You might kind of shift up your voice for that, or if there's sounds, to interpret the sounds, and just kind of make it as engaging as you possibly can.
I remember watching a video about reading aloud, and the narrator kept saying, be sure to ham it up. And I always thought that was just so hilarious that he talked about hamming it up, which, just sounds so corny, but at the same time, it's true. Kids, love, especially after a busy day, to see mom, dad, anybody, changing their voice and becoming, an animal in the book or whatever it might be. And it just shows, I think, gives them a chance to see you just as a fun person, and not just, the parent who's trying to take care of all these things within a day. So if you have books that you remember as a child, again, call your library and see if they have copies that you could get. If you do have a favorite book as a child, that's because that you created that memory. Someone helped you create that memory. And that's, what we would love for you to do for you and your kids, is to create those memories. Reading is fun, it's relaxing, but also it's like the single most important thing you can do to help get your kids ready to learn at school. Because by reading aloud to them, you're not only going to be talking a lot and building their vocabulary and that kind of thing, but they're learning listening skills, they're learning to take turns with conversation. Their attention span over time, not right away, but over time, will get a little bit better. So all of those things really help set the stage for getting to school, being familiar with books, associating with great times on someone's lap, and being ready to learn. And, so you as a Toledo resident have such a great opportunity with Imagination Library here and Reach Out and Read in many of our doctors' offices to have the tools. The books are kind of the tools. And then, the other part of that equation is just somebody in the house who's willing to pick that book up, or when the toddler slaps it on your lap to be read, to just take a minute or two here and there to enjoy it. The other thing I was going to mention, though, just in case you are not a big you just don't love the task of reading aloud. It happens. There are parents who are not super comfortable with reading aloud. It might be that you don't feel you're the best reader yourself, or you aren't sure which books to pick, or you don't have the books yet in your home. I want you to think a little bit about your daily routines. And first of all, think about when you can include looking at books in your routines. It might be the bedtime book that you read just before you go to bed, but there is other ways you can include books in your daily routine, like if you're going to an appointment, drop a book in the diaper bag. And it's something that you can do while you're on the bus or waiting for the appointment. That's a great way to use books. If it's a really hot day and you just need to get out of the house, take a couple books and find a shade tree. Or if you're going to the park, take a couple books along, and when everybody's hot and sweaty, they need a break, you can stop and look at books. When you're traveling, like I said, near or far, books are pretty transportable, so you can bring them that way. And if bedtime isn't the best time at your house to read, my oldest daughter loved books so much. She did not like waking up in the morning. So we started a routine where every morning I would pick 3 short books, because I knew we didn't have time for a long one, but I would bring 3 short books up to her bed. And that's the way she woke up, is that she would get to pick one and we would read this short book. And then she knew once we read the book, she got a little wake up time, she was ready to get out of bed. So, do what's best for you and your family. But reaching down to my goodies here. If you are looking for some other ideas that are still super literacy rich, but are different than books or in addition to books, I'm going to show you a couple ideas. One is, this is just an envelope. This was actually my youngest's mailbox. Her name is Claire. And this is just an envelope. You could use old mail that you got to make one of these and decorate it. but I used to put this outside of her bedroom. And when she would wake up from a nap or wake up in the morning or whatever, she'd always check her mail, because you never know when you get mail. And there might be a little prize in there, or it might be a note that I wrote, or a picture that I made, or a joke or a riddle or something like that. But again, it's just literacy rich, because there would be something in there that she could look at, we could read together maybe, or talk about, and encourage good conversation. Let's see, you can make homemade books. This is a homemade book that is, this is Claire again, actually, that we just use Ziploc bags and cut pictures, either family pictures or pictures out of magazines, and stuck them in the Ziploc bag. So you could keep this book forever, or you could change out the pictures. Then we just put tape on the edge, and it's a homemade book. So you could do something like that. Another fun thing is kind of like a magic mirror. Again, this is just a popsicle stick, and we made one in a big star shape with a hole in the middle. And you could ask them, maybe if you have a 4-year-old, to go around the house and look for things that start with the letter B, or things that are red, or something like that. So it could be at home or in the classroom or whatever. Again, it's just encouraging the whole idea of talking and recognizing things have labels and words. So that's great. I'm going to mention this one too. This is just a jar that I've used for lots of different things. Right now in the front, it's a color jar. And if you could see inside, you could see that all the things inside are red. So this, you could take any non-glass jar that's clean and just give it to your preschooler and say, go around the house and find things that are blue, and bring the jar back to me when it's full, or something like that. And then you could talk about what's in the jar. You could also use the jar to be kind of like, take strips of paper and maybe write the names of nursery rhymes, like Little Miss Muffet, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and just put those slips of paper in here. And maybe once a day, instead of reading a book, or you're short on time, let them pick out a slip of paper, and that's the nursery rhyme you say for the day, or the book that you read, if you have a list of all the books that you read. Just a simple idea with an empty jar and paper and pen, and kids, it's a game. It makes the game. So those are all just some examples of, things besides books, or in addition to books, that are good literacy rich activities that you can do at home. I don't know if we have anybody on the call who has like a tip they'd like to share, like a time they like to read at home, or an activity that they especially like doing, or Brandi and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I think maybe just remind everybody how to register for the Imagination Library.
Absolutely. So families with children anywhere from birth to age 5, so anywhere in the age span, can call 211 and talk to a United Way representative and sign up over the phone. Or they can go to the United Way website, and I included the link in the chat, and register online.
Thank you.
The good thing to remember about the Imagination Library too is if you do move, you can call United Way or 211 back, and they can change your address in the database for you, so that as you move, your books will move with you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just add a couple little things about time to read, because I know as a busy parent who has a lot of multiple responsibilities, especially in this COVID time, always finding the time to read with a child can sometimes be difficult, but even encouraging your childcare providers or grandma or aunts to read with your kid, or if they're watching a babysitting, to even bring a book with you when you drop them off so they have something to read to your child. And then my kids are actually 5 years apart, so it's been a blessing to have the older sibling practice his reading out loud skills with the younger child. Is kind of killing two birds with one stone then that way. And the other day, my 7-year-old wanted to read a book, and I was in the middle of a work call. So I said, you know what? I think our pet dog wants you to read to him. Why don't you read to the pet? You know, and he just thought that was the coolest thing. And luckily our puppy cooperated and sat and let him read to him. But, you know, just any creative out of the box way to get some literacy and reading books in your home is great.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, it's not one person's job. It's, you know, it can be a family, an extended family activity for sure.
Well, this was excellent information, ladies. Thank you so much. Very good information to share out.
Yes, thank you.
We love talking about it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, and if anybody has any more questions, they can always email Alina or myself. And I appreciate what you guys do. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, and have a good night.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everybody.
Take care.